What's going on, everybody? Today is November 28th. It's Tuesday, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. Welcome, everybody. I almost hit that twice. Somebody's quick on the draw this morning. I like it. Hey, we've got almost everybody. We're just missing Robert. That means we've got Junmi, Beth, Carl, Andy, Aaron, and I'm Brian. And today we have a really, really interesting topic to talk about, and that's AI art. I'm going to kick this over to Aaron, you in just a second here, but just to sort of set this up, you had brought this up and said you've gotten in some conversations. I'll let you get into that. But really what we want to talk about today is try in 30 minutes. And we will try in 30 minutes to try to give an overview. I know if we go down any one road too deep, we'll miss a lot of other stuff. But we want to talk about, ethics. We want to talk about plagiarism. We want to talk about copyright infringement, a lot of the different topics, and just generally get a feel from the group here where we all individually land on this. I will sort of throw this out as a preview. I don't really know. I'm hoping maybe this show will help me out. I'm hoping it'll help a couple people along the way. Just as a disclaimer, as you guys probably know by this time, but if this is your first time ever listening to us, we're not a panel of experts. We're here to do sort of a round table. We're not legal experts. So anything you're hearing on the show is always our opinions based on whatever we've read, information we've gathered, and we're sharing that all with you guys. So with that in mind, Aaron, why don't you kick us off on this topic, and we'll take it wherever it goes.
Thanks, Brian. That was Brian's "I'm not a lawyer, don't blame me if it goes wrong."
Exactly.
Okay, so this topic came up 4 days ago. There's a little bit of a backstory. I'll try and get through it quickly. I'm in this, of all places, it's a Facebook group called Star Trek Shit Posting. So people take memes out of Star Trek and they write funny text on them and they post them as memes, and there's really good fun stuff. But the topic came up about AI, and this guy posted, or this person posted, all AI art, in quotes, is theft. And boy, did that kick things off. I responded with my thoughts, and then further on, another guy came back to me and literally said, where is it? Just find this one this is the one that sort of really got me thinking, wow, something like, you don't deserve the art. So the bottom line and it was obvious to me that these people were primarily artists, and the concern, like literally I could see the rage coming out of the screen from some of these people about the idea that these AI art platforms like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, that sort of stuff, they are training their systems on artwork that is, in theory, copyright, and they don't have permission. Now, there's a whole legal story about this that I'm not going to go into. I'm hoping to interview a lawyer in the AI exchange, gentleman by the name of William Love, who's far more of an expert on this and has given me a few pointers to get going.
But he is an IP attorney.
Yeah. So he knows his stuff. So my initial thought was, no, it's not. It's just that they're not reproducing everything exactly. It's like it's mix and remix and that kind of stuff. And, my response was something like that. But then some of the comments coming back made me start to think, maybe there's more to it than this. And one of the articles William sent me was an article in Wired about a lawyer by the name of Matthew Butterick, who's leading a wave of lawsuits against major AI firms about the theft of art. So the idea is that to train an AI art image, you give it a ton of artwork and photos, paintings, whatever, and it works out how to use that. Now, the theory is that what a lot of these companies have done is they've gone out and scraped the web and grabbed a whole pile of stuff that they don't have copyright permission to use, which is why you could type into Midjourney, picture of Iron Man, blah, 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 and it will come up with something that looks pretty close to Marvel's Iron Man. Now, I'm pretty sure they didn't go to Marvel and license that IP. So those companies are typically claiming the fair use, I don't know what the correct word is, but that's what they're saying is we're using it for fair use. And I now have an opinion personally that is kind of sitting on both sides of the fence. I can actually see both sides of the perspectives. I think one of the biggest concerns for most artists is they've spent a long time learning to become an artist, and they now see it as, Midjourney can grab a copy of their image, throw it into their algorithm, and you can write, do me a picture of so and so in the style of, and name an artist, and it will do it. And so therefore they're looking at it as being a huge potential impact on their ability to earn an income as an artist. So I want to throw it back to you guys a little bit. I got a few thoughts I'll throw in later on, but what are your thoughts on this? Is it breaking copyright? Is it illegal? Is it not? Where do you sit?
Well, it. Well, we knew going into this conversation or this episode that this was going to be a really complicated subject.
Yeah,
and I think
for sure.
it would. I think it behoove everyone to. We'll just do it. I'll just do a quick overview of what kind of just breaking down what are the major sections or concerns. And Aaron, you talked about this already, but we seem to have things that work in the legal realm, right? So that's that covers copyright, compensation, consent of the art use, and all of that kind of stuff. Then there's the ethical and philosophical side of things, right? So these, I think, are the two major categories that people seem to be polarized about AI art or AI generated art. Now, on the copyrighted things, I've said before, I don't necessarily agree with what the current copyright office has ruled about generating art and things like that. But beyond that, I think the sense that I'm getting from various articles I've read and from artists is that the biggest concerns for them is, number one, from the legal side of things, that there was no effort made for consent to use their art in these libraries, these training libraries, and there was no offer of compensation for using those arts, using that art in their libraries. Now, we have known in the last couple of months or a few months that OpenAI made a deal with was it Shutterstock, Getty Images,
Getty,
to resolve their issue, to enter like in this 5-year deal or something like that to use for their training images. So I think all of this really comes from that mentality of which is kind of prevalent in the tech world, is ask for forgiveness, not permission. And so they moved quickly and fast, and they'd used all of these available libraries to do the training and get their product out, but didn't necessarily spend due diligence in verifying or validating the process in which they got the information, and that might have its own legal issues and things like that. But I think from the artist side of things, that's that primary concern is like, why did you do this? I don't agree for you to do this, but you've done it anyways. What is the recourse now? And that's why we're seeing these suits.
So I'm gonna pop in here and say that I think this brings this hits people in the gut or the heart, right? This tends to bring a visceral reaction. And I think if we tease it out, there are a couple different things. The first piece, you don't deserve the art, feels like I worked my butt off to achieve this skill.
Yeah.
As things advance, tasks get more automated and easier, right? So like the fact that you invested all this time, and I'm an artist, like I am, the fact that you invested all this time and now it's easier to do is just like the advance of technology and time. I'm with you in how that feels, but that's not something that that for me, that's a different side of the argument that feels like, yeah, this is a bummer for sure in that context. The second piece of that is, what do we own? I own my likeness. I own my voice. I own the sound of my voice. You can do all sorts of stuff with that with AI right now, but technically I own those things. Do I own my skill and my style? And at what point is it unique enough that now I own it outside of the individual copyrights of the things that I produce? I think those are questions
Yeah,
we're
there's a
wrestling
great
with.
conversation there. Yeah, I'm a big proponent for, and this is a conversation I don't want to go in, too in depth on this, but this comes down to a an issue of ownership over your data and information, right? Your knowledge, your skill, your style, like you mentioned, is all things that are derived from you, things that you create, things that you have invested in, right? And that includes things like, even simple things like your biometrics. That's you. Technically, it is not covered in law
Right.
right now that is yours. So, but not to go down that rabbit hole too much. I think the go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to say something on that. So my initial response when this first kicked off on Facebook was to say something like, every artist on the planet has probably trained and been trained by trying to copy someone else's art. Now, I don't mean they copy it and put it out there for sale. Some of them probably do, but that's how we learn things often cases. If you're a painter, for example, you're going to probably look at some of the paintings made by maybe some of the famous artists in the past, which are not covered by copyright, or you may be looking at paintings covered by people that are still around and still have copyright. You are probably training yourself. So all of us are let me just find this quote. I found this online from a guy who's an art director, and he said, everything in art is inspired by something else. Everything's a remix, we always say, and everything you're doing is inspired by a vast number of other things that you've seen directly or indirectly. So that's, for me, is an interesting perspective that doesn't necessarily say that the AI art people are doing the wrong thing, because if artists became artists by inspiration and by remix, then it's the same process. It's just done by a computer.
So the difference in that is that when you are following somebody's techniques to learn, it takes a fair amount of time, and often what artists do is discover their own style in that journey, right? Some people go on to be able to do absolute forgery, but the more typical path, because humans are slower in their learning process, is like, oh, this is interesting. I now have an idea. I'm going to go in this direction. AI takes like a second and a half and doesn't do it, right? Unless it's
so imagine if any of us were not artists, never did art, never did anything like that, and spent a week learning or just looking at, reading about, watching videos about, I don't know, Picasso's art for a week. That's all we saw. All we did, all we consumed. And then after that week's done, somebody tells us, hey, I need you to draw this. Just like a rant. Don't you think then, wouldn't we, through a week of just looking at Picasso, probably would draw something that would resemble something around Picasso? Then wouldn't you think, okay, if it took us a week, that an AI would take 10 seconds to do the exact same thing? So I guess the argument could be made that, if it takes the AI 10 seconds and if they trained anything, essentially the output isn't copying your thing. It's learned everything through the corpus of the internet. And that's that would be one argument to say, technically everything online is fair use, and it's just been trained for everything online. So what, you're going to have, I think this is where the legal component is. You're going to have to prove that copy, from the letter of the law, that it has actually stolen your thing and actually produced outcome that is similar to yours. I think that's where it's going to have a hard time for artists proving that point.
Okay, so put a pin in this for the conversation with William, because we did a show on music, and somebody had done all of the chord progression combinations and released them, and his response to that was that doesn't invalidate people's copyright. So
Well,
we're gonna see if we can get legal answer.
But it's
stuff like
all
that. Yeah.
it's essentially. I have a feeling this is all going to go up to the Supreme Court. Like that's eventually how it's like you're
Of
not
the
gonna
US.
of the United States. Like, eventually it'll either they strike it down or like progression. There, no one's gonna stop, right? It's like a ruling. You're not gonna stop. You're gonna go right all the way. And I think that's when eventually you're gonna have to wait. But then, does that have influence on every other country where this is
Oh,
happening?
it
Right?
Yeah,
it
I mean,
definitely
what happens in the US
when
doesn't really
countries come
impact
out with
Australia's
their
legal position. So,
interpretation.
yeah.
Well,
When
we're
they come,
now the US is now signing what UK put together, right? That was something that happened just recently.
Mhm.
So like influence us.
Yeah,
Please.
definitely, and I want
Except
to make
Canada.
a
Go ahead.
quick point. I want to make a quick point that I think what we're seeing with artists bringing up these concerns and bringing these suits and all this this kind of legal action is a good idea, right? Whether or not we agree with what their case is, I think it's a good idea to bring these subjects up and bring these suits up because that's how we do things in the U.S. is we take legal action. That's how things are learned about. That's how that distribution of information and if it's brought into our news cycle and all those kinds of things. And so I think it's really important that artists take these steps to voice their concerns and take actions towards that, just so that we can see in the end, when it all washes out, what the rule set's going to be, what the framework's going to be. Because we're still in that age, that period of time where we don't have really any solid foundation. There might be, some rulings from the Copyright Office, whether we agree with that or not, or whether that should be changed. They asked for input from, from the public. And so right now, and the government with like their AI.gov and trying to set up all of their systems, it's all about filling that knowledge gap and trying to get, society and technology on the same page. It's always a continuous struggle, but it's really good that they're taking this action to bring up these concerns so that we can determine how we want to move forward. And I think that speaks to more on the the ethical or philosophical side of things. Like coming across my feed lately has been this video of Stephen Fry reading this letter from Nick Cave about essentially the attack on human creativity by AI or ChatGPT specifically. I don't necessarily agree with statements, but I I agree in the broad strokes that this is something from human side of things, humanity side of things that we just need to be aware of, and we often lose a lot of that. And I know our focus in our show isn't really talking about the philosophy of what it is to be human and things like that. We focus on the application of business, but I
There's a
think all
true
of those
topic.
elements, right? All of those elements really, they're important in our day to day and how we approach things. But I won't go too much into that. I know I can tend to babble. So
I think the
I'll jump
bottom
in
line,
real
as
quick
I
here.
see it, is that there are AI is different. Like it's not computers change things, cameras change things, all that stuff. I remember reading that when I think copyright law in the US, I think from memory, came about in the early maybe 1900s or late 1800s, where people started doing piano rolls. Those cylinders that you put into a piano and it would play a tune. And piano players were basically complaining somebody's copying my song and I'm not getting paid for it. And they basically decided that wasn't copyright. But then eventually they made some changes for royalties and that. But I think this is technology changes everything no matter what. We now take for granted Photoshop does stuff even before we started seeing all this AI stuff in there. It does stuff that we couldn't do or would have replaced somebody else's job. So it's a huge thing. I think Jeremy's right. I think it's good that it's going to go into the courts and we'll start to get some clarity, and maybe it'll come down to what everyone thinks is fair and reasonable. So, I mean, the the TV industry, the Actors Guild and the writers, they all had a big strike about this, which is all about, letting whether the studios can copy their likeness and that kind of stuff. Anyway, Brian and Andy, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the legal side because I really have no business being there. I'll be honest. I mean, I think William Love and other people are far more capable of talking to that. So I won't say anything that for the legal side of things. I think back, I was trying to think about this earlier. Like, I don't consider myself an artist, although there was a comment from Simon in our comments. Thank you, by the way, for all the comments. There's a lot in there. A lot of them say LinkedIn user on our side, so I apologize. Simon's like literally the only name I can see from inside of StreamYard. Mm-hmm. So I apologize. A lot of them just say LinkedIn user, but Simon said if you ask a real professional artist, I'm not really sure what a real professional artist. I guess an artist is somebody who gets compensated for their work. But I kind of in the frame of mind of everybody is an artist at some level. I mean, I have abilities. They just may not be Beth's abilities or otherwise. But I think back to sewing machines and people who could sew very intricate quilts and how many hours that must have taken for them to be able to do really, really fancy different types of stitches. And then some machine comes out at some point in history and that machine can just do it. It can just do that fancy stitch. And all of a sudden you have, I would imagine, lots of people who go, wait, hold on. Something that I used to be paid very well for can now be reproduced by a machine much, much faster and economically. And of course, businesses are going to move quickly towards that machine because it used to cost a lot of money and time for somebody to do it. Now, the other side of that I look at is say, okay, but hand sewn intricate quilts have not disappeared because a machine can do it. In fact, I would say I value the hand sewn, the hand carved, the hand built, whatever, painted, drawn, sketched, go on and on and on. I value, so do many, 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 many thousands of people value the human version of it. I don't think that goes away because of AI. Now, I know that that's sort of a side topic of what we have, but just because a new technology can produce something similar, faster, more efficiently, and business might move in that direction. And yes, it is painful for the people who have previously maybe made a very good living based on that skill set, and it's being replaced by technology. As you said, Beth, no doubt that we will see many, 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 many more instances of this in the very near future with AI as jobs shift and certain jobs go away. And, there's less brick makers as houses are being 3D printed and so on and so on and so on. But I guess my point here, just to summarize it, is although I see this change and I understand and I sympathize with artists, and like Simon saying that, he would say almost unanimously, artists would say they do not want their information trained with LLMs. I agree with you, Jimmy, in the sense that the idea of asking for forgiveness and oops, it's already out there. And even if all the American companies, the OpenAIs and the Googles and all that, all unanimously agree to do it, there's really no putting Pandora back in the box, because somebody else will be able to just train another LLM that's not regulated over in some country that doesn't have the laws, doesn't care about the laws, and it will still happen. So there's no way to undo it or not do it in the future, even if laws came down on it today. Unfortunately, my opinion is that if your artwork is available on the internet by your doing or other doing, that the reality is that there will be language models trained on it, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm staying out of the legal side as to whether you have legal ramifications to maybe sue or all that kind of stuff. And if there is, fantastic. People should get their worth for that. So I guess that's where I look at it is, I don't feel like, although this is a monumental shift and we're just at the iceberg tip of it, of the tip of the iceberg right now, the stuff below the water is stuff we're probably not even fathoming in this conversation of how AI is going to fundamentally shift what people can create, what humans can create. I don't think it devalues the human element of it, because for me, the things that I'm going to cherish are not the things that are able to be quickly, easily reproduced. The things that I'll cherish are the things that took time, effort, that somebody had a story behind it. All the things that matter to me. If I'm going to display Beth's art on my table, I'm going to be like, it means something to me because Beth created it with two of her hands or whatever the case is. And that's why it's valuable to me. So anyway, I sort of rambling there. I'm trying not to ramble. That's just where my brain is today. And I'm fully happy, if that's not where my brain is next week. But that's where I sort of see this today.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, what do you think?
Well, I think the reason it's such a torturous and painful discussion is that AI devalues the mediocre accomplishments of humans out there in the world. So if you're a well-trained graphic artist, you've learned this. Well, AI can probably get there. But if you're a composer of something that's unique and you actually have creative sparks that rise to the exemplary, AI is not likely to do that by rote power and speed. It's the combination of things that is the sort of the spark of human creativity, lateral connections that you would never even imagine. Like why did Picasso make things so abstractly wrong, right? And yet it was somehow compelling to the viewer. So I believe that I feel badly for the many people whose lifetime of effort in developing a skill set is now being supplanted by AI, and that impact graphic artists, particularly because now I can do the images that I need for whatever through Dolly or Midjourney, etc. But I think there's still a place, and I think, Brian, you were making this argument, there's still a place for artists of exceptional talent. But I think it's really devaluing. The devaluation of typical capabilities produced by humans is impacting every element of society. And the legal front that's going to be the challenge of the artists against the AI developers is a place where we're going to understand, what are the limits of protections for humans' accomplishments as compared to computed accomplishments.
I think one of the things that we're sort of talking around and that Andy kind of got at here, the most important skill I have as an artist is how I see, is how I engage with what is happening to me visually and the places where I go with that. And that is unique to me. I see things light up for me that don't light up for other people, which is why my images look different than everybody else's. Most important skill I have as a musician is what I hear and what excites me in what I'm hearing. Those are completely transferable skills. Like you can use the new tools, and what you see and excites you still does, and you will be unique in that medium. You're right, Andy. It's the middle part where like I'm trusting some outside scaffolding that sort of substitutes for what I'm seeing and being unique in it, and that's a funky place.
I think something I've read quite a few times in this subject is that one of the differences, if you're an artist, whether you're a painter or whatever, or you carve stuff, you have a different view on the world when it comes to creating your art. So you have the ability to take AI and apply your extra expertise to create something far more unique, far less common than someone like myself or any of the rest of the guys and gals here could do. Because the classic example is a photographer. Photography is not just about going click, there's the picture. It's about what's the light like, what's my f-stop at, do I need to be positioned in a certain place? There's so many factors that make a beautiful photograph from a professional photographer that someone who is also good at Midjourney could then apply those extra expertise and make an amazing picture that we might not ever be able to do because we just don't have that mindset, for want of a better way to put it. So I don't think it's going to wipe out artists per se. I think it's going to make, if artists adapt to it, they could produce much better, more powerful stuff. It's just going to change the world. Technology does anyway. So, I mean, Who would have thought 20 years ago that one of these, we'd all have a computer in our pocket that does everything that a damn mobile phone could do? Probably not, very few of us. So that's just technology. It's just going to keep going whether we like it or not. So
I think I know we're getting close to time here. It's just there's a couple artists that I know that are to the mindsets like, hey, it's already out there. And this is not to discredit or downplay any concerns and issues and rightfully, hey, legal arguments that artists have. But what they say is like, hey, we've got to embrace this. Just like you said, Aaron, it's like, you can't put this back in. But I think the danger for me to the concern that I have a little bit is that artists will, a lot of the good ones will be like, you know what, because AI is there, and even whatever happens on the legal side, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop because there's no point, because AI has been able to do my life's work. I just want to stop. And I think that's the danger, because if they stop, then we lose out on some amazing thing that these people could do. And I think it's a little bit of a detriment to humanity and society as a whole that we don't get those outcomes, because people have the perception is, you know what, there's no point. And I feel a little sad on that part. That's like, you know, when somebody's like, hey, there's no hope, then it's like, why am I doing this, right? And I feel that is where I'm like, if you have the feeling of hopelessness, especially when it's like, hey, you should accept it, it's too late, you can't do anything about it. Yeah, you can take a legal argument, but you have to pay for the legal. I don't have very much money. All this compounds, right? And so that's where I think it's like there's that danger of it. It's like, hey, we're missing out on some really amazing things because. But then on the flip side, hey, we've got other people like they fully embrace this, and there's a whole different set of artists that come
Right.
out
There's a new.
that are
Yeah.
AI like inspired, and
That-
we're gonna get something even crazier than what we've gotten. Is amazing. So
That-
there's both angles to it.
That's the
I
last thing I
think-
want to say in that, and
Yeah.
I'll look at the. I want to pull up some comments here as we're wrapping up. But like,
Yeah,
I was
we
just
got
going
so
to say,
many-
like, that the other side of that, I think you just kind of hit it, Carl. For me, was what I was saying is that doesn't diminish any of the stuff we talked about. However, one maybe bright side of this is by democratizing art in this way, I
Mhm.
do believe that it's going to reach a larger portion of the world and give access where access was not currently available. Right or wrong, right or wrong. But what I think will come out of this is actually more amazing art, not less. I don't believe that AI and what AI's current capabilities kills art. As a matter of fact, legally or otherwise, the ramifications of it, I actually believe that we will see some of the most amazing new art because of AI. That's just my personal
Yep.
take on it. Just my take on it. I just want to. I know we have we're already over, but we've had so many comments in the comment section.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. We
Yeah.
can't get to all of them, so what I'm going
Thanks
to
for
say is,
joining.
if you really enjoyed this conversation, I highly recommend you going over to our LinkedIn show page so that you can see all of them, because I couldn't possibly get to all of them. But I'm going to hit some of the ones
And we
early
do
on. Obviously, I
apologize
mentioned.
to whoever LinkedIn users because LinkedIn wasn't telling us your name.
Yeah, and I apologize, but I wish it would in some cases. It just depends on where those comments come in from. But we did get a couple comments. I mean, we don't have time to talk about all of them. Obviously, we're over time. But Greg, thanks, Greg. You're always an awesome fan. Appreciate you coming back. The issue is more about the metadata than the data. Trading on Picasso is only a problem if it's labeled as such. And then Simon, who I had mentioned earlier, and I'll put a second comment in a second. He said, "Great chat panel. Thanks. Wish I could hang around. It's great to see the ethical issues being seriously discussed." Yeah, thank you for that. We wanted to bring seriousness to this conversation because it is serious, and we try to keep it lighthearted on the show as well. But obviously, as Aaron kicked off earlier in the show, there are some. This is like politics and religion. People are going to have opinions of this, and they should. And we want to make sure we're being respectful of all sides, because again, we're just a a round table talking about it, and we want to be respectful. And yes, Simon mentioned. Sorry, I didn't mean to disparage any of the panel's artist abilities. That's okay, Simon. I didn't think that's what you meant. I'm sure you're all brilliant. What I meant to say was people who depend on creating art to live. Yes, so making money off of their art, and then perhaps no longer being able to do so. Graphic artists, I think, Andy, you mentioned them. I certainly see that. If I can now do what you went to school for, got a degree for, have student debt for, and now I can reproduce something in seconds that you used to be paid handsomely for, yes, I see how that would be a problem. And if I was in those shoes, and the thing is, just because I'm not in those shoes today doesn't mean whatever I'm doing professionally will not be on the chopping block tomorrow.
I've already had AI has already impacted my ability to make a living with things that I can do, and it's probably going to happen to all of us. So some of the stuff
we're seeing it all through sales. I mean, I think, and this is a different topic, but I mean, sales teams are going to probably shrink in size because you're going to be able to do more with less salespeople. So we're seeing it across the board. All right, listen, I want to get off the topic of this. Thank you for all the topics, the comments. I'm just scrolling through here. And I just let's see going live. Yeah, I mean, another comment on your LinkedIn user. What's the difference of going live with music playing at a club as it promotes the artist, not the finances of the live video?
So if you're doing covers, you're covered by that, and you're promoting yourself as a live musician singing, and that's not going back to the original artist who created it.
Right. And when I had a gym, they would come after us all the time for playing Spotify in the gym. That's illegal. You have to pay for that because I'm not giving due where it should be, and people aren't being paid appropriately. If I'm streaming Spotify off of my playlist, off of those artists in a public place like a gym or a business like the gym, they would come after you all the time because we would post videos on YouTube and it would get docked, and then they would come after us. And this happened to every CrossFit gym that I'm aware of, ran into this problem. And it was tricky. It was tricky because you couldn't just do that and play it on a speaker. So there's a lot here. We could certainly look. We're going to come back to this topic. I think that we're probably going to come back to the legal side. We'll probably have shows that maybe dive into one or two areas of this. Obviously, this is a broad stroke, pun intended. And I'm sure we'll come back and have more conversation about this. But hopefully, this is helpful to everybody to listen. Made you think. Maybe if you were solidly on one side of the fence, you're now thinking maybe you're sitting on the fence. I don't know. I know I am.
I've definitely moved from one side of the fence to the middle of the fence in diving into this thing. So that's been an interesting experience for me. So
yeah,
I got hung up on the fence. I tried to swing my leg over and just stuck in that out there.
And he tried to paint
and to all those artists, like what Carl was saying, is those artists who feel that there's no hope, just realize, and I admit I'm an optimist on this, but just realize that humans are extremely adaptive and creative. Please look at this as an opportunity to improve yourself, improve art, and keep fighting. I think AI, if anything, you could look at it as a new competitor, right? It should be something that can help you and aid you in your art creation. But if you feel as an adversary, be better, get better than them, get better than AI. And I know that's a tough ask, but I think humans can come out of it. And guess what? If it's the fire that you need to take that next step, I think you should take it.
Junmi coming with the Robert perspective, like at the end of the show.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap it up there. I think that's a good place to leave it there. Come back and visit us the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we got AI in the news. We'll be talking about all the news in the last 7 days. On Thursday, on 11:30, we're talking about ChatGPT turns 1. So we're going to be talking about all the things that have happened in the last year with ChatGPT, where it came from, where it started, where it is now, maybe what the future looks like for ChatGPT. Friday, we are talking about Q star, because we don't know what it means, but we're going to give our best guesses. Carl has done a lot of research on that. We'll probably let him lead it. I've read and watched and all that. That's coming up on Friday. So if you're interested about the secretive open AI papers and why Sam Altman was actually fired and what is Q star and why is everybody excited or not excited or scared for AGI? That's Friday's show. Come back and see us all week, guys. All right, that's it.
All right.
Thanks.
See you later, everyone.
Love you, I guess. Sure. Bye, everybody.
Wow.
I don't know why that was coming out of my mouth, but love you.